Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're tackling a topic that, let's be honest, usually feels like a massive, intimidating, jargon-filled buzzword. You hear about data breaches and hackers in the news constantly, right? But the actual mechanics behind protecting our digital lives are absolutely fascinating and, believe it or not, entirely understandable. In this explainer, we're going to break down the complex world of cybersecurity and show you exactly how this digital battlefield operates.
So, ask yourself honestly, in a world where digital threats are everywhere, how safe is your data really? It's a critical question. And no, the answer doesn't lie in just throwing money at the most expensive antivirus software you can find. The real answer lies in understanding the fundamental mechanics of cyber risk. It's about knowing exactly what the threats are and how modern defenses are actually structured to stop them.
Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We're going to hit 5 main areas: foundations of cybersecurity, exploring threats and attacks, essential defensive controls, governance, risk and compliance, and finally, security testing and operations. Let's get right into it.
Chapter 1: Foundations of Cybersecurity. Defining the rules of the game. Before we start talking about flashy attackers or shields, we really need to define what it is we are fundamentally trying to protect.
It all essentially boils down to 3 core pillars, which make up what we call the CIA triad. That's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These are basically the golden rules that every single security control out there aims to protect. If a breach happens, you can bet one of these rules was broken. Either a secret got out, a hacker altered some data like a bank balance, or a vital system like a hospital network was taken completely offline.
Now, this is an area where people often get tripped up. Vulnerabilities and threats are actually totally different pieces of the puzzle. Think of a vulnerability like a cracked window, and the threat as the burglar outside. When that burglar actually finds the cracked window, that creates risk, and we calculate that risk as the likelihood of the break-in multiplied by the actual impact of what they'd steal. All of these pieces have to be managed together. To manage that risk, we lean heavily on core concepts like the principle of least privilege. This just means ensuring users and systems have only the absolute minimum access they need to do their daily jobs. Why? Well, because if someone does get hacked, we severely limit what security folks call the blast radius of the digital damage. I mean, if a marketing intern's account gets compromised, the attacker shouldn't suddenly have the keys to the company's master financial database, right?
Moving on to Chapter 2, Exploring Threats and Attacks, the Conflict. Let's meet the antagonists of our system, whose motives almost always boil down to stealing, disrupting, or just plain extorting.
We'll kick off this rapid-fire look at threats with malware. Now, this is a massive category that covers all sorts of malicious software. Whether we're talking about a virus, a worm, a Trojan, or spyware, they all spread in different ways, but they absolutely share one singular destructive goal: to damage your system, steal your data, or extort you for cash. And speaking of extortion, attackers love using ransomware to encrypt a victim's files and just demand a hefty payment for the decryption key. What's even scarier now is double extortion. Basically, pay up or we leak your highly sensitive data to the world. On the flip side, you've got DDoS attacks, where they flood a target with traffic from thousands of compromised machines, totally overwhelming its capacity and completely disabling critical systems. So, with all these highly technical, super damaging threats swirling around out there, you might be wondering, how do attackers actually get into these secure systems in the first place? Are they furiously typing code into a terminal like in some Hollywood hacker movie? Well, the answer brings us right back to the human element. I mean, why spend weeks trying to bypass a complicated firewall when you can just politely ask an employee for their password by pretending to be the CEO who urgently needs some gift cards? Simple trickery is still the absolute easiest way in. Phishing and social engineering rely on highly deceptive emails, text messages, or even phone calls to trick us into handing over credentials or clicking a bad link. Now, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from a quick phishing email, you have advanced persistent threats, or APTs. This is where incredibly patient, stealthy attackers, very often well-funded nation-states, hide deep inside high-value networks. They maintain access not just for hours, but for months, sometimes even years, quietly pulling off corporate espionage or gearing up for massive sabotage. Okay, Chapter 3, Essential Defensive Controls, the Shield. So how do we actually fight back and empower ourselves against these incredibly varied attacks? We fight back by systematically cutting off the attacker's easiest paths. We use encryption to scramble our data, protecting it whether it's just sitting there or moving across the web. We mandate multi-factor authentication, so a stolen password like password123 is totally useless on its own. We deploy firewalls and network segmentation to stop an attacker from moving laterally if they do happen to get in, and we practice diligent patch management to constantly fix known software vulnerabilities before they can be exploited.
The real crucial concept here is defense in depth. Think of it like a medieval castle. You don't just rely on a moat, and you don't just rely on a single wall. Layering these defenses ensures that if one barrier gets breached, the underlying layers step up to successfully contain the threat without exposing the entire kingdom.
That brings us to Chapter 4, Governance, Risk, and Compliance, the Rulebook. Because effective cybersecurity isn't just about buying fancy software, it's deeply rooted in our legal responsibilities. Protecting data is actually a legal mandate wrapped in a huge regulatory alphabet soup. Frameworks like GDPR for general data, HIPAA for healthcare, and PCI DSS for credit cards, these are completely non-negotiable. If you fail to comply, you're looking at massive financial fines, sweeping legal liability, and the kind of devastating reputational damage that a company might literally never recover from. To actually navigate all those regulations, organizations turn to major security frameworks like NIST, ISO 27001, and CIS controls. By using these standardized playbooks along with continuous risk assessments, companies can actively map threats and calculate risk scores. This helps them confidently benchmark their posture and figure out exactly where their security budget will deliver the absolute most protection, rather than just taking a wild guess. And finally, Chapter 5, Security Testing and Operations, the Watchtower. Look, having policies is fantastic, but continuous human vigilance is what actually keeps the Watchtower running around the clock. There's this really vital dynamic between being proactive and reactive. Proactively, we do penetration testing. That's where authorized good guys simulate real attacks to find hidden flaws before the bad guys do. Reactively, we rely on a Security Operations Center, or SOC. That's a 24/7 dedicated team hunting down anomalies, detecting threats, and responding in real time. But let's be real, even with the best defenses in the world, incidents are going to happen. And when they do, a structured incident response plan immediately kicks into gear. Detect the threat, contain the spread to minimize damage, eradicate the root cause, and finally, recover the systems. Having this mapped out in advance dramatically speeds up recovery time and, super importantly, preserves critical forensic evidence. Yet, despite all the incredibly complex technology we've just talked about, security awareness training is still king. Training everyday staff to spot a sketchy phishing email, handle data properly, and report things that look weird, that reduces a company's overall risk far more effectively than buying the most expensive, cutting-edge software tool on the market.
Just remember, humans are absolutely the most exploited attack surface. While human error is usually our biggest vulnerability, an educated, vigilant user, someone who just stops and thinks for a second before they click, that is the ultimate unbreakable firewall. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. Knowing the real nature of these risks and how layers of defense like the CIA triad and multi-factor authentication actually work, what is the weakest link in your own daily security habits? Seriously, what small change can you make right now, today, to tighten up your own digital castle? Think about it. Thanks for learning with me, and stay safe out there.